Let's get one thing straight. You haven't messed up. Not in any way that shows up on a spreadsheet. You hit your targets, you follow the process, your reviews are clean, but have you felt it? The subtle shift, like a faint hum under the surface of everything you've worked for. Suddenly, the feedback you're getting isn't just different, it's colder, and it's harder to ignore. You're not included in the casual lunch plans anymore, not officially excluded, just overlooked. In meetings, when you speak, there's a polite pause. Not disagreement, just a subtle recalibration, as if your words need to be converted into a different language before they can be processed. This isn't about making a mistake. This is about something far more fundamental, something that could cost you more than just your reputation. You're being assessed for compatibility, and the system's tolerance for difference is far, far lower than its tolerance for error. Once you're marked as different, even your silence can be seen as a threat. Don't tell yourself you're imagining it. Your position is now defined by one of these realities. 1, your work gets approved, but the way you do it is quietly labeled as idiosyncratic, a curious anomaly. 2, your ideas are heard, but they're treated like a foreign document. They require additional context to be understood. Or 3, you're still in the room, but your presence itself has become a managerial footnote. We'll consider X's unique angle separately. This isn't a social problem, it's a systems problem. You're no longer just an employee, you've become a compatibility issue. Here's the brutal, simple logic of any large organization, any platform, any bureaucracy. Its number one goal isn't to be right, it's to keep existing, to persist. And the cheapest way to do that is to make everything inside it as similar, as predictable as possible. This is why being different, genuinely structurally different, is more dangerous than being wrong. Think of it this way. A mistake is a known bug. It's in the system's own code. When a trader at a big bank loses a fortune due to a flawed model, it's a catastrophe. But it's a catastrophe the system knows how to handle. There's a playbook. Investigations, firings, press statements, new compliance rules. The system actually grows stronger by dealing with it. It gets to perform its own power. But someone who is different, they're not a bug, they're a virus. They're running a different operating system. Imagine that same bank hires a brilliant economist who starts questioning the very ethics of speculative capital. They're not wrong about the numbers. They're wrong about the religion. Their presence suggests the game itself might be flawed. That's not a mistake you fix. That's a heresy you contain. A mistake costs the system money. A difference challenges its reason for being. Now, consider predictability. Systems are giant prediction engines. They need to forecast risk, output, liability. An error is a predictable cost. You can budget for it, insure against it. When an airliner is grounded due to a mechanical flaw, it costs billions. Yet the entire manufacturer has teams, protocols, and legal frameworks for this exact scenario. It's a terrible but familiar kind of disaster. The person who doesn't fit in, they are an unpredictable variable. Picture the genius coder in Silicon Valley who only works from midnight to 6 a.m., communicates entirely in written memos, and finds team-building exercises psychologically painful. Their output is stellar, but their process is a black box. Management cannot model them. They cannot slot them into the resource planning spreadsheet. For a machine built on prediction, an unmodelable person is a permanent glitch. The system can survive a known disaster. It must defensively ignore an unknown element. Finally, look at group cohesion. Punishing a mistake can be a team-building exercise. It creates a common enemy. We are not like the person who failed. It draws a circle and puts everyone on the inside. Watch any corporate scandal. Heads roll and there's a collective vow to do better. The error becomes the glue. The person who is just different. They don't make a good enemy. You can't rally the troops against someone who simply has a different rhythm. Instead, they create a low-grade, constant friction. They make people unconsciously work harder to maintain the shared illusion of how things are done here. They're not a threat you can defeat. They're a cognitive burden you eventually decide to shed. The system unites people by punishing a failure. It comforts them by slowly sidelining a difference. You need to internalize this and separate it from your self-worth. The system isn't rejecting you. It's not a question of your abilities, but of the format you occupy. When the system decides you no longer fit, it's not a personal failure, it's a recalibration. But here's the truth, even within this rejection, you still hold power. The question is, how do you navigate the shift? You might be more efficient, more creative, more honest, but the system's prime directive is self-preservation through consistency. Integrating a better but incompatible component is a risk. Deleting a faulty but standard component is just maintenance. Once you're flagged as different, arguing your merits is pointless. You're speaking the wrong language. What happens next isn't really your choice. It's the system initiating its standard quarantine procedure. But here's the thing, even in quarantine, there's still a chance to fight back if you know how to play the system's own game. First, your signals get downgraded from input to noise. Your unique way of thinking stops being seen as a feature. It becomes static. They need to filter out to hear their own instructions clearly. Second, your contributions get put on hold. They're not rejected. They're filed under requires special handling. They enter a bureaucratic limbo where they are forever waiting for the context that will never arrive. Third, you get mentally recategorized. The system stops trying to understand why you are the way you are. It just wants to know if you can still perform function X. You go from being a whole person to being a tool with an attitude problem. This isn't you executing a clever strategy. This is the system's immune response. It's trying to wrap your otherness in a layer of bureaucratic padding so it can't infect the core. In this zone, 3 stories you tell yourself will make everything worse. The martyr story. I'm a visionary, misunderstood. This doesn't make you a misunderstood genius. It brands you as high maintenance, someone who refuses to follow the rules of the game. The prophet story. History will vindicate me. The system's timeline isn't measured in decades. It's about quarterly reports. Your truth might be compelling, but it's irrelevant if it threatens the status quo. The Rebel Alliance story. I'll find my tribe, the outsiders who think like me. The system can tolerate an individual anomaly, but it will not allow a faction. Trying to rally support only marks you as a threat, and threats get eliminated. The real question is, how do you break free from these stories before they lock you into a role the system can no longer ignore? The next move isn't about proving you're right, it's about surviving the system's inevitable response. So what's left? The paths are narrow. Path A, assimilate. Grind down your own edges until you fit the socket perfectly. Learn to love the things you once questioned. The cost? You save your job by retiring the parts of your mind that made you valuable in the first place. Path B, Become a specialist tool. Negotiate to become so hyper-specialized, so uniquely useful in one tiny area that they tolerate your oddness everywhere else. The cost? You become a utility. Your career path ends. You're the quirky expert they keep in the basement until the specific machine you know how to fix breaks down. Path C, plan an exit. Acknowledge the mismatch. Start looking very quietly for a different system, a different company, a different industry, a different way of working, where your difference might be called an advantage. The cost, starting over, the insecurity, the grind of rebuilding credibility, but it's the only path where you get to survive. Refusing to change leads to exclusion. Changing completely leads to erasure. The worst choice is believing you can have both. Here's the final cold insight. Systems aren't afraid of problems. They're afraid of problems they don't have a category for. A mistake has a file folder, a procedure, a resolution. A difference is a question mark that asks, why do we do it this way at all? This obsession with categorization explains the most perplexing workplace phenomenon of all. Why someone who breaks the rules but gets results is often forgiven, while someone who follows every rule but thinks differently is quietly sidelined. The rule breaker is still playing the game. They affirm the importance of the rules by breaking them. The different thinker might be playing an entirely different game. And that is the ultimate threat. This leads us to the system's next piece of twisted logic, a logic that explains why controlled disobedience is sometimes safer than independent thought. In our next chapter, we'll expose why the system tolerates the rule breaker more than the heretic. They can manage a rebel. They don't know what to do with a prophet who speaks in a language they refuse to learn.